No, that's
Audio for Ms. Bonfi.
that's the problem.
Yes, I can hear.
You're looking very
William,
I've got council energy.
Question audio.
I don't raise the budget.
Good, how are you?
Enabling.
We'll talk after the meeting.
Yeah, I think we'll.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Got our work cut out.
Ms. Bonfi, can you hear us?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Oh, wait.
Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, no. Exactly.
That you are taking electric
Right.
way.
We're better.
Didn't hear.
Really?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
And
Ms. Bonfi, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you.
Right. Thank you. Good morning.
all right.
Good morning.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. If we can come to order and stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of
America.
and to the
Republic
republic
which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The clerk would please call the roll.
Chair Bagley,
Here.
Vice Chair Bailey. Here. Ms. Bonke.
Here?
Ms. Franklin.
Here.
Mr. Gordy.
Here.
Ms. Hayes.
Here.
Ms. Holmes.
Here.
Mr. Karen Tonis.
Here.
Mr. McLaughlin.
Here.
Ms. Mensing.
Here.
Mr. Stork.
Here.
Ms. Vasquez Luna.
Thank you.
And Mr. Waukesha.
Here.
And Madam Chair, we have.
Wonderful. All right. Supervisor Bonke is on vacation and has requested to participate in the meeting remotely. There being a quorum physically present. Do I have a motion and a second to allow Supervisor Bonke to, thank you. I hear a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, the motion's accepted. Welcome to the meeting, Ms. Bonke. Rich, safety moment.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Didn't get a chance to make assignments beforehand, so let's just do some assignments here real quick. John, if you'll take 911 primary, get a backup on 911. We got phones back there. Alex, if you could do that. Joe, if you could be the runner, I know you've got running shoes on. So AED, CPR, can I count on Dallas and Chris to take care of that there? Walk through the building, no known hazards, tripping hazards or anything like that. Again, just as a note, our primary evacuation route will be through the double wooden doors there. We'll take the stairwell down. We won't take the elevator down. We'll muster out in the circle area out there, and Leslie will have she's got the roll call sheet and stuff like that. So we'll make sure that everybody gets accounted for. That's my safety moment, Madam Chair.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that. Next is our approval of the agenda. It was circulated to everyone previously. If you've had a chance to review, I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So move, Madam Chair.
Is there a second? All right, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, the agenda is adopted.
Supervisor
Next,
Bonke votes
Oh, yes, I'm
aye.
so sorry. It's not in
No
my
worries.
notes, but I'm- Thank you, Meg. I'll make a note now to get your vote on things. All right, so that is everyone, including Supervisor Bonke. Next is approval of the minutes from the June 20th, 2025 VRE Operations Board meetings. Does anyone have any corrections or amendments? Not seeing or hearing any, I'd consider a motion to approve the minutes.
Move for approval, Madam Chair.
Any second? Thank you, Ms. Helms. All right, all those in favor, starting with Ms. Bomke.
Aye.
Everyone in the room in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right.
Because I wasn't here.
Ms. Hayes is abstaining. It passes unanimously. All right, so we have made it to chair's comments. Welcome to the July VRE Ops Board meeting. I see most got the polo memo. We're all rocking our various local and other colors today. Everybody looks great. A couple of updates. Yeah, we look great. We've got our summer colors on. I think butter yellow is actually the color of the moment. So you got it. All right.
That's a good excuse.
You like that? So a couple of housekeeping notes. Just to remind everybody, the VRE Legislative Committee will convene shortly after our full ops board meeting today. I know all of you want the deep legislative cuts before you head out for the summer, so stay around for that. And before this ops board meeting, the CEO search committee met this morning. I want to give a general update here on where that stands. The search committee will be comprised of myself, Vice Chair Bailey, Secretary Stork, immediate past Chair Meg Bomke, Mike McLaughlin representing VPRA, and Ms. Vasquez Luna has joined us as well. So we will have 6 members. We have already begun our work, essentially. We met this morning. We are nearing selection on a recruiting firm and hope to enter and finish those negotiations ideally next week, if possible. We have been looking at a job description. We've given some feedback on it. Rich has provided feedback. So the goal and hope is to have a recruiting firm on board promptly. And we will share with you the final selection and sort of their resume, but we're nearing that selection. And get a job description, start to build a candidate pool over the summer. The search committee would ideally be meeting with candidates as early as mid to late September, if at all possible. Get ourselves into a decision-making posture, hopefully in October. So that we can take recommendations to the commissions in November, if at all possible, in sort of the dream scenario, and have somebody on, by the end of the year, by the beginning of next year. I think we're all aware there's some very important things happening in the General Assembly and the federal government moving forward in the transportation funding space. And so I think we're very eager to, have this resolved. There's also some massive, exciting capital projects going on. So we're highly motivated to try to do this process and have a candidate in place before the end of the year. But the commission sign-off process, means it's going to take a period of time. So we're shooting for a recommendation by November with the fallback of having the commission sign off in December. We will probably give this group an update. We definitely will give the group an update when we reconvene in September. And every month sort of after that. But I want to thank the committee members who have volunteered and who have already been giving significantly of their time. They will continue to do so over the summer. And we will have a closed session today that will touch on some more specific elements of this that we are allowed to discuss in closed session because they involve personnel. Ms. Franklin.
I'm actually opposed to Rich leaving.
Second.
But in all seriousness, for those of us not on the search committee, can we still sit in on some of the interviews?
So that's a great question. Committees are always open to any member, and they're generally open regardless if they go into closed session. So yes, you are absolutely welcome to attend the meetings and to attend interviews once they're scheduled. But in frankness, and just you guys can all understand, we're going to schedule those activities around the committee members' schedules, and then we can share what has been scheduled with the full ops board, and people can choose to participate. Mr.
Sure. I think participation is one thing. I mean, being there is one thing, participation is a different thing. So I guess you the committee will have for at least the first round of interviews, a set of questions that is the same for candidates, et cetera, et cetera. So it changes the setting. If there's an expectation that, more members will be present, et cetera, candidates need to know that.
Yeah, so it's a fair point. I think, I would like to keep the work of the committee and certainly any votes that the committee takes to those 6 members. A part of this is also driven by quorum. Once we've established we have 6 members for that group to meet, we'll need 4 to show up. I believe that's the majority. So if we actually start putting more people on, it was something we ran into with our CLO committee, which was lovely. I think we had 8 people volunteer for that, but it created a fairly high bar for quorum. So I would like to keep the voting membership of the committee at 6, but to the extent others want to attend, listen, hear what the candidates say, hear what the committee discusses, so they can bring that knowledge back in, to the full ops board votes on the recommendation, I think would be, valuable. Steve unfortunately had a family matter and isn't here at the moment. I'm happy to run everything I'm saying by our lawyer as well. The first opportunity I have, just to make sure that, the process as I'm describing it is compliant. We're going to have a closed session later today that will require us to discuss some other specifics that may need a lawyer sign off and some guidance on. So if we can, I will happily loop back to everybody with an update, maybe through Miss Lamb, as I've done a few times. And just so everybody understands, part of why I do that too is to avoid us getting into reply all scenarios where we're suddenly, meeting in ways we shouldn't be. Is that helpful?
It is, for what's worth, the way, as you know, Arlington County faces various occasions or instances of, so the way we do that is, first of all, we agree on a basic set of questions for the first round of interviews. And so that's, distributed among members, and then the chair of the committee or the leading person of the committee kind of reports on how these interviews went and how these questions were answered. And then there is at some point a decision where a second round of interviews and with, what's a reasonable number of finalists, maybe in our case would be less necessary. And then for the second round, there is a consideration of how many members would be sitting in that.
No, it's good feedback.
One way to do that.
Yeah. No, I mean, I haven't done this, led this process before, so I'm very open to sort of improving it however we can. And VRE hasn't done it in, 5 years or so. So I think we can certainly aim to provide, to circulate an update, that's simple enough after, let's say, our first candidate pool comes together, to give people a sense of what that candidate pool is looking like. I appreciate that feedback. And if Anaya who's going to sort of help us on the procurement and recruitment firm side, if you can sort of help keep track of this conversation a little bit and help support this process, I'd appreciate that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other questions on the CEO search committee and where we're at on that? Okay, then we will move into the CEO report.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Try to be as concise as possible here. Just in the past month, staff along with Keolis held our quarterly safety dinners with all the mechanical operations and the rail operations teams out in the yard. Always a good event, always, to show, acknowledge, if you will, the safe work that our entire teams do. On-time performance, still lagging. If there's a bright spot, June of 25 was on par with June of 24. So at least there's some consistency. But not in the preferred way. I'll show you here for the month of June. Actually, I'll go to this one here. We did have, in addition to congestion, we did have some, I'll just call it some frequent switch and signal issues, primarily Amtrak in Washington Union Terminal. But in all fairness, there was some on the CSX as well. So as you notice on that line there, popped up to 35, where 2 months ago, we only experienced 4. But weather also, if you notice up top, similar to the month of April, a little bit in May. As I continue to say, we don't like delays. Obviously, our passengers don't like delays, but if we're going to take a delay, particularly for weather, similar to you know, driving out on the interstate and stuff, if there's high winds, a lot of weather, the best thing for a train to do is slow down. Okay. So, and our passengers understand that. Of course, the best thing to do is stop, right? The safest thing to do, but nonetheless, so we continue to try to work through those issues, and again, congestion still remains the top one up there.
Mr.
What's
McLaughlin.
your contact performance? Is it 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes?
It is technically it's 6 minutes or 5 minutes and 45 seconds at the end of the line station.
That is, I think in the industry, that's pretty tight. I think Amtrak is more like 15 or even more.
But for commuter, that's for the type of service we operate, that's not considered tight, that's considered standard. Amtrak, you know, long distance and stuff, yes. It's 15 minutes typically between. Yeah.
Mr. Stork.
I know it's a very minor part, but you had dispatcher crew. What does that generally mean?
Excuse me?
Dispatcher crew, what is that?
Yeah, it could be, it's a category, let's just say, if there's an unfavorable dispatcher decision, let's just say, maybe favorable to the dispatcher, but unfavorable to VRE, then we basically log it as a dispatcher issue. An example, I'm not sure. One could be, let's just say this, believe it or not, we still encounter, every now and again, we'll encounter, you know, we have particularly southbound trains. So we have a southbound Fredericksburg line train. It still happens once in a while. Sometimes that dispatcher will line it up for the Manassas line and not keep it on the Fredericksburg line. So that would be a dispatcher related issue. So.
Oh, yeah, Ms. Franklin.
Very quickly. So 61% of the delays were because of congestion. And congestion, I do want to contextualize, is usually because we're waiting on other train services like CSX to.
Or Amtrak. That's, yeah, if you look at this here, that's what we break it out. You'll see the majority of that, at least this month, you know, is, well, there's a little bit of a balance, but between freight trains and Amtrak trains.
Yeah, but I do think it's important for our riders to understand that when we're delayed, a lot of times it's not because of anything that we can do differently. It's because we're waiting on other trains that we don't service to get through.
That is correct.
And to that end, last night at MBTC, there was a really great presentation from DJ Statler at VPRA. And it addressed, you know, directly that, you know, VRE is going to be one of the most direct beneficiaries of all of the Long Bridge addition, the fourth track work. Even he talked about the shoe fly bypass, you know, all the things happening, but separating freight and passenger rail, you know, through this corridor should bring that number down substantially.
Absolutely.
So, continue.
Okay, so ridership, we're down about what, 12%, 13% compared to May, but that's not unusual for this time of year, taking a little bit of a hit there. But again, if you compare to January of this year, we're well over 50% above what that number is. And then of course, ADR, or average daily ridership, is commensurate with the with the previous slide. July's looking pretty strong right now. I expect July to be actually above June. Just did want to point again to Tour de VRE. We are in July. Next time we come back and meet is going to be in September, and Tour de VRE is October 4th. Just the site's up. You can sign up for it now. really, again, as we've tried to push year over year, just increase the attendance and stuff like that. And just want to give a shout out primarily to Dallas Richards. He's the champion of this. And of course, the entire staff contributes to this, but really appreciate his efforts keeping this going, if you will. So just want to put a plug in for that. Also want to mention, we are headed towards our 100 millionth rider. Okay. And so I want to give you a little idea at the end of June. That's how close we are. We are predicting that somewhere, if ridership continues what we're seeing here, we're predicting somewhere potentially in that last week of September, so the week of September 29th. We will not obviously be in a position where we can identify exactly who that rider is, okay? So what we're gonna promote obviously is a day, okay? On this day, we're gonna eclipse 100 million rider. And this is throughout the history of VRE, obviously. So we're gonna be doing some things on board the train to commemorate that, try to pull people out, and they'll have something to mark that event. I just think it's a big number. It's a huge milestone. And, frankly, we're going to have a little fun with it with our riders and stuff. So just wanted to point that out.
Clearly, there was some clause in Rich's contract that nobody noticed that he was going to be leaving the organization on the 1 millionth rider. It's timing up rather neatly.
Buried in the fine
Yeah, in
print.
the fine print somewhere was.
He is the 1 million.
Right.
I'll award it to myself.
That's right.
Anyway, we're going to have fun with it. And you'll hear more from me about this in September. It would really be, a great thing to have a lot of you out there on that day. Come out on the train, even if you got to do
To be there to be the rider.
exactly. But just come out and really make that, a boon for ridership that day. Like I said, we plan on handing out, like golden tickets, that kind of stuff. You can help us hand out golden tickets to our passengers and stuff like that. So we're going to have fun with it. So
As soon as you know that.
we will.
Date.
We will let you know. We will let you know.
But we will agree all that we will be the 99 million.
No, it's all funny.
And Sarah Bagley will be exactly coming. A little bit late.
I claimed it last night at MBTC. That's right.
And then I wanted to do one thing here at the end of my comments. I asked the chair and Ms. Hayes if you stand up over here.
Oh, you get a big.
So about 13 hours ago, the NBTC meeting, as you recall, the operations board last month approved the conveyance of the parking lot property to the commissions. So we pay our bills on time here around VRE. Just wanted to present that to Supervisor Hayes as a check. Maybe you could.
You want me to take this?
But no, it's a real check because it's $10 on that check. Anyway.
Don't spend it all on home.
Yes, thank you.
But
Lori, don't pocket that.
I just,
Okay, I'm leaving now.
it's really just, we just wanted to symbolize, obviously, our, what makes VRE as our partners, jurisdictional partners and stuff like that. And some of you know more specifics than others. Supervisor Hayes knows the history. And we've been trying to do this for like 10 years, right? So it's a momentous event. And I think it was like $1 a year. So that's why it's $10, right? That we.
Is inflation
Yeah.
factored in that?
Well, So anyway, want to have a little fun with that. But again, very serious. Spotsylvania County's been a great partner with ours. The station opened November 16th of 2015. So we're coming up on our 10-year anniversary. So just want to have a little fun with that. And hopefully if you get that to Ed or somebody, or walk in his office and give that to Ed. So
He'll get a kick out of that.
anyway, that's my comments or summary. Madam Chair.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Dalton. Any other questions or comments on the CEO report? All right, seeing none, we will move on to Virginia Railway Riders Express riders and public comment. We accept public comment both in person and electronically with the VRE website. Members of the public wishing to make public comments have 3 minutes and should state their full name and the jurisdiction they live in. Written comments submitted before 8 a.m. this morning will be forwarded to the members of the board and attached to the official minutes. Do we have any members of the public here who would like to address the board? Hearing none. Madam Clerk, do we have any electronically submitted comments?
Madam Chair, we did not have any public comments for the boards.
Okay. All right. Well, then we will move into our action items, beginning with action item 9A. Authorization to issue a GPC services task order for Geographic Information System Infrastructure Asset Management. Rich, could you introduce the item?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, this specific task order under the GPC Consulting Services contract is with STB for the amount stated in the recommendation plus the contingency. Just generally speaking, this is a continuation of enhancing technology as it relates to tracking and evaluating our various assets, meaning facility assets, rolling stock assets, et cetera. This is essentially a requirement by the FTA in order for us to receive stated good repair money. So it's part of our transit asset management plan. But specifically, this work will go on for about a year. The way we're setting the system up, though, I just want to make clear also is that through GIS tracking and stuff, we're setting the system up because we know we're expanding the system. So we're not just sizing this particular system for the assets that we have on the ground right now. It's actually going to be set up to where we can add assets, I guess in some cases take assets away. So what this will also, this basically gives us the ability on the fly, if you will, to pull up information, add information, do various evaluations. And again, that's in line with our transit asset management program as required with FTA. So that's my summary, Madam Chair.
All right. Any questions or comments for Rich on this item? Ms. Holmes?
Just have it sounds like something we have to do, and I I'm in favor of it, but I don't really understand how GIS is helping us track our assets, like our physical assets.
Yes.
So like the Fredericksburg station,
Yes.
not like rolling stock or anything like that.
Well, rolling stock is part of the program, okay?
Yeah,
I mean,
that's what.
but rolling stock, I guess maybe where you're going with that, because it moves.
Well,
maybe, or-
you know, like how is GIS keeping track of that?
Yeah,
Just
yeah,
understand.
it's again, part of the grand or the broader system. Obviously, GIS is not necessarily needed for rolling stock, but it's again, part of the entire transit asset management program. The GIS piece is very, I'll say very specific to fixed assets, fixed physical assets.
Yeah. Okay.
But it drills down to, understanding the life cycle of a trash can. I mean, it gets down to that level, and that's how we need to plan. And that's how we need to, in order to maintain our assets in a state of good repair, we need to know when to replace those trash cans out. So it gets very detailed.
Thank you.
No, it's a good question. Any other questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve. There's a motion from Mr. Cordy, a second from Ms. Bailey. Further conversation? All right, Ms. Bonke, how do you vote on the motion?
Aye.
All those in the room in favor? Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, 9A passes. Item 9B, authorization to execute a contract for Manassas Park Station parking lot milling and paving. Mr. Phelps?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. So seeking authorization to execute a contract with Espina Paving Inc. of Woodbridge, Virginia for the amount stated in the resolution plus a contingency. You gave authorization to do this solicitation back earlier this year. And And so through a competitive solicitation, as the background notes, we've completed that process, and now we bring to you to the board, recommendation for authorization. I will say that the plan is to be able to get out and perform this work before winter hits. So that's the plan. That's my summary, Madam Chair.
Any questions or comments or support for the item?
Yeah. All right, thank you so much. It looks, after the construction, it looks a little bit like a war zone out there, so it'll be really needed.
You should make a move.
Yep.
Do we have a ribbon cutting date on this yet? Are we?
We have a tentative ribbon cutting date of
October 21st is the.
tentative. Let's just not,
All right. Well,
that's the answer to your question, but it could subject to change, of
Okay.
course.
but we'll be launching it soon in the coming months. All right. So appreciating the support, I would love to hear a motion.
Moved. Second.
All right. So we have a motion and a second. Ms. Bonke, your vote on the motion.
Aye.
All those in favor in the room?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, the motion passes. Item 9C, recommend commission approval of agreement for relocation of Virginia Electric and Power Company facilities in VRE Manassas Park Station parking lot.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Longest title of the meeting so far. Simply, this is a recommendation, obviously, to essentially for an agreement that we have with Virginia Electric. And this, again, has to do with the Manassas Park Station. Might be easier if I just went to the next slide and just show you here in red. So think of this as if you're not familiar with the station, there are large power lines that go through this station area. So way back when, early 2000s, there was an agreement whereby between the commissions and Virginia Electric of essentially identifying where the poles and the wires and everything came through. And of course, we constructed parking lot around that. They have subsequently came in and realigned the poles and the wires, if you will, kind of in that shaded blue area. So where you see that it sort of dips down here, that was the previous line. Now it's moved up. So in other words, we need to go back and essentially identify that in the document. So this is a recommendation to the commissions. I'll just note that I know we just went through a delegation of authority change. We were very specific, though, in there that these types of agreements that would not go to the commissions, and the operations board would have the authority to make the call, would have to be something that's very specific to a VRE project. Well, it just so happens, this happened while VRE was doing a project out there. So it really doesn't meet that criteria. So the recommendation is to take it to the commissions and get their authorization. That is my summary, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Rich. Any questions or comments on this item? All right, a motion would be welcome.
So moved.
All right.
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. Ms. Bailey, how do you vote on the motion? I mean, Ms. Bonke, I'm sorry.
I vote
Bonke.
aye.
All those in the room in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, item 9C is approved. Item 9D, which is underwhelmingly titled, but is very exciting. Recommend commission approval of contract of purchase and sale with VPRE for 4 Manassas Line property interests. Rich.
Thank you, Madam Chair. As you recall, most of last year we worked through at the ops board level, subsequently at the commissions, on a funding agreement with VPRA to obtain property interests as part of the Manassas Line acquisition that VPRA led. Our commitment was to provide $155 million for that. We have been working diligently with FTA. And once again, we're utilizing funds that had already been directed to the commissions. And so we've been working diligently with the FTA to get money and grants, et cetera. So we're at that point now where we can, now start essentially taking possession of those assets. So what this does, and if you read the agreement or glanced through the agreement, this would account for about half of the 155 million. And again, 155 million over 5 years. So this would account for about half of it. Simply, and I think part of that is we're being partly driven by FTA to go ahead and go spend that money. It's directed to you, so go ahead and go spend that. All of that to say, part of the agreement we've already met. We did make a $26 million payment, about a month or so ago. Mark, is that? Yeah, about a month or so ago. And that was non-federal funds. And of course, we're using that to match the federal funds. So long story short, this purchase and sale agreement, this was part of the funding agreement. We're ready to move on. We're with the commission's authorization early September. We're trying to do a close somewhere in the late September, October-ish timeframe. The one element that's not addressed, so the other half of that, approximately half of that $155 million, which is the overall operating easement over the line, or one line, if you will. That will be forthcoming. Staff will be working on identifying a small addition of non-federal funds, and then of course incorporating existing formula funds that again have already been directed. Be working to incorporate that either in this budget cycle or next budget cycle. So you'll see that as it works its way through the budget cycle. So this is, as the chair noted, it's pretty exciting. I think this shows again, made a commitment to the Commonwealth, and this shows the region's moving forward. It's a little bit bigger than the check that we just gave to Supervisor Hayes, but nonetheless, the spirit is the same. We follow through on our commitment. So that's my summary, Madam Chair.
Thank you for the summary and the review. Any questions, Mr. Cordy?
I know we don't have an answer on this right now, but just kind of thinking of it moving forward with the announcement that Union Pacific is looking to purchase Norfolk Southern, and whether or not that's going to change any of the negotiations that we have with Norfolk Southern. But just, I don't know, you've got a smile on your face, so thoughts?
These contracts are done.
Okay, good.
We have contracts with Norfolk Southern, legally agreed to contracts. Same with CSX. Those things are done. There's a reason that sometimes we do push through things quickly, but that issue has come up in our organization. And those, you keep in mind those, if there ever is an emergency, take a long time. So those things take a long time. So, but we are watching that. We're watching any repercussion from that, because there's one east-west railroad that could be, let's leave it at that. Who knows if other things could happen. That often happens in any industry, right? Someone else has to compete. So we are watching this closely, but legal agreements are done. We have legally binding agreements. So we're good.
And just to add a finer point on that, those are, for the most part, those are in perpetuity agreements, so 100-year agreements. So it's not like those agreements are only in place for 5 years.
We own it, and it was permanent. He's what we're giving you, which is a big deal. The permanence the VRE is getting from this agreement is a big deal.
Yeah. It's a great question. Yeah, no, thank you for raising it. Any other questions or comments on this action item? Yes, please.
Actually, in negotiations, whether or not we get some form of right from them or ownership, the merger and or acquisition came up because you have full 100% protection if you own it or have an easement. If you only have an operating right, that can be different if someone else takes over. So hence why we argued forcefully, and it wasn't a tough this discussion with Norfolk Southern or with CSX. That's why we have strong rights when it comes to ownership or easement. Those do transition to anyone else who may be owning the company in the future. You're good.
Said another way, a year ago, if you asked that question, because we were just going through putting this transaction together, we'd be a lot more concerned.
Mm-hmm.
So good to have it behind us.
Ms. Bailey?
Yeah, just, thanks to my colleague for the question, because I noticed everyone's shoulders when Mike spoke. So, but the previous conversations, Rich, thank you for just bringing us along well, to this point to ensure that we are in good space.
So,
And I think when we get to item 10B and talk about, budgeting moving forward, we'll get a little more into the weeds of where the rest of the money comes from and how we're planning for it in just another moment or two. Not seeing any other comments or questions, I entertain a motion. Mr. Gordy, and a second from Ms. Vasquez Luna. Ms. Bonke, how do you vote on item 10D?
Aye.
All those in the room in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, action item 9D is approved. Information items, 10A, spending authority report. Mr. Dalton.
Spending authority report is in your packet. We have one item. We tried to stretch out the narrative on that to see if we could fill up one page, but nonetheless, one item. If anybody has any questions, glad to answer them. That's 10A, Madam Chair.
Software is expensive. I think that's the takeaway. Any other questions or comments on the spending authority report? All right, we are going to move on then, and we'll invite Mr. Schofield to the lectern. How would you
I mean, that's a churchy thing, but
for item 10B, the fiscal year 2027 budget key issues.
Clicker check there, Mr. Schofield. All right, good. You got it.
Where's yours?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, board members. So we'll just recap sort of where we are. Those of you who have been here for a few years know the drill. But so we will be coming to you in September with the presentation of the preliminary budget. It does have to be referred to the commissions. If we have a proposal to increase passenger fares in the budget, then the board will also need to authorize us to start the public participation process on that and to hold a public hearing. Then in October and November, we'll dig into the details on the budget. We'll go in depth on the capital program. We'll give you the updates on the outreach as it happens, and also the results of our master agreements survey. As I think Chris has talked about, we did our first online survey back in the spring. That was a great success. So we do intend to do the master agreements survey that way as well, which should help us to have some turnaround on the results there, which is an important input to the budget. So then in December, we'll bring you our recommended budget. Hopefully, you will then move that to be referred on to the commissions. They will adopt it in January. Then your work is kind of done here, but of course, that budget will need to be incorporated into your own jurisdictional budgets in the spring, and then our new fiscal year will begin on July 1. So we are really sort of kicking the process off in earnest. So I've structured the discussion today into a few buckets. Most of the discussion today will be about the operating budget, but we will talk about the capital budget at the end, and that's where we can talk about the Manassas line, as the chair mentioned. So first, sort of the core policy decisions that you all as the board are going to need to wrestle with around things like passenger fares and the subsidy. Next, sort of the big picture, the macro impacts that sort of go into the budget that we don't control, but that are important in terms of how the budget's going to end up. The third, of course, is putting all of those things together, where we think we're going to land in terms of the pandemic relief money that we do still rely on, and then, of course, the capital budget. So we had some excellent discussion last month at the committee meeting. I really appreciated that, and I'm hopeful that we can build on that today. And what I really want to walk out of here with is some guidance and some direction from you all, so that when we bring you the preliminary budget, that it's as close to what you want to see at the end of the process as it can be. So passenger fares. As you probably remember, we did not do an increase for the year that we just started. We did have an increase last year, which was the first one since the onset of the pandemic. fares are generally lagged behind inflation, lagged behind the federal transit benefit, sort of reducing our overall purchasing power. I think, please correct me if you think I'm wrong, but I think based on the feedback that we had at the committee, we do need to return to regular fare increases. And my intent is to present a preliminary recommendation to you all in September for a 5% increase for the next year for 27. Also, I want to kick off, we don't need to do it now exactly, but I want to have a little bit more in-depth discussion about how we price our multi-ride discounts, how we price our 10 trip and our monthly tickets, and whether we think that those ratios are right or whether those also need to be tweaked. So as I mentioned, if the board does approve that as a part of the preliminary budget, then we will initiate that public participation process that we have that has to go along with any change in the fares. We continue to tweak that as we go along. You know, fewer and fewer people are tending to come to the library at 8 o'clock at night. You know, are there better ways that we can reach out to the public? Are there better ways that we can sort of get their responses, get their feedback? So we will continue to try to tweak that as we go along. So the jurisdictional contribution head here is perhaps not as obvious. You know, over the last decade, again, the jurisdictional contribution has not kept pace with our cost growth. And I would say honestly, rather than sort of looking back at what did we do during the pandemic, I would really like us to sort of try to look ahead. And we don't have to decide this right here today, but I think we need to come to a consensus as a board on a framework, at least, for thinking about the jurisdictional contribution. How frequently should we be looking at making changes to that, and how does that integrate into your own local budgeting? How much of VRE's existing costs for its existing level of service do we feel is right for the jurisdictions to be contributed to? And then begin to think about how does that translate into the future once we're adding service. How much are the jurisdictions really going to be expected to bear for the costs of new service? So I do not have a number in mind yet for what we'll bring to you in the prelim for September. I would be happy to open up the discussion about that once we get to the Q&A. Service, of course, as we've talked about a lot, as a part of TRV, we've committed to some limited introductions of near-term service prior to the completion of Long Bridge, weekday and weekend. And then, of course, as we have talked about a lot with the system plan, a much larger increase once all of that new capacity, once that separation, all of those good things are in place. We will continue to evaluate in concert with you as we go through the budget process, how some or all of these planned increases could be put in place in 26, in 27, and what the incremental costs and the projected revenues will be with that. Rich has made this point. I want to make this point too. Before we deliver any kind of new service, we have to be confident that we can deliver it reliably to the customer. We don't want to deliver a poor level of, we don't want to introduce something new and have it be poor. Before I get to ridership, in addition to sort of these policy choices right here in the room, we obviously will keep you all informed on DMV moves and SJ28 and sort of those larger regional policy discussions that are going on, given the sort of parallel timing with VRE doing its budget and SJ28 doing their recommendations. I don't think anything official will be incorporated into our budget for next year, but we will certainly be watching it, and who knows, there may be things that we need to put into the amended budget or into the 28 budget. So, moving on to sort of macroeconomic factors. I don't want to pretend like I can predict the future as far as ridership. Let's just say that the return to office mandates for the feds have been very positive for VRE, but that impact does appear to have sort of plateaued. As Rich mentioned, we expect to see things down a little bit during this summertime. That's a natural kind of pattern across the year. I think we'll really be watching what happens in September and October, and then trying to use that to as the input to the budget presentation for next year. Obviously, you all know as well as we do, lots of uncertainty about the macroeconomic picture, about tariffs, about employment in the region. So all of those things are going to be playing into the budget. As far as costs, I want to call out one specific cost and then sort of costs in general. Insurance continues to be one of the sort of top of mind items for us. The things that we have to cover, having sort of portfolio of coverages that we have has increased over the years in terms of terrorism and cyber, in addition to sort of the basic auto, property, and liability, with liability really being the big one. Our total premium costs in just under a decade have more than doubled. And with the upcoming increase in the liability cap as part of PREA coming next calendar year, that number will jump even further. All of this is happening despite the fact that VRE has a great record. It really has nothing to do with our operations. It has to do with the capacity constraints in the international insurance markets. So, we're going to continue to explore the broadest range of strategies that we can to sort of mitigate that cost growth in the near term, try to work with other commuter rail properties, work with the federal government to sort of, as much as we can, change the legal and the regulatory environment in the long term. On inflation generally, we had in the 2010s, we had that long period of sort of low and stable inflation. Obviously, we had significant interruption post-pandemic. It has stabilized over the past, let's say, 2 years or so. But again, lots of uncertainty in both the domestic and the global environment, especially for inputs on both the operating side like diesel, and then on the capital side for things like steel. All I can tell you is we will continue to monitor these things during the process and try to get the best inputs that we can into the budget for next year. We are excited, of course, as all of you are, I imagine, to get the proposals next week from contractors to provide train operations and maintenance. Taken together, these services represent about 1/3 of VRE's operating budget. So even small changes in how these contracts are structured, what the unit costs are, things like that, can leverage into a very large impact on the operating budget and the decisions that we have to make on how to balance it. So just again to say, as this solicitation process moves along and as it's appropriate, we will incorporate whatever updated information that we can into the budget projection.
Mark, if you wouldn't mind.
Of course.
Just if you could summarize as part of this right now, what's the timing for that roughly?
In terms of getting the contracts and the stuff.
Yeah, what is that?
Kristen.
Of course, we have proposals due next Wednesday, which is the 23rd, as well, commence the evaluation process. We anticipate the evaluation process will conducted August into September as well, followed by negotiations with the hope of coming to the operation board in October with a recommendation, subsequent recommendation to the authorization with the commissions in November. So that's the trajectory that we're on, obviously subject to change based on the number of responses and how negotiations unfold, but that's our timeline as of right now. Obviously, we'll know a lot more in a few more days as to how many responses we receive, but that's the situation.
I understand. And so, as I mentioned, all of these policy decisions, all of these macro impacts, they all sort of come together at the bottom line that says, okay, how much pandemic relief money do we think we're going to need to draw on next year? So just to give you some context, since the RTO directives and the increase in the ridership, our passenger revenue has increased about $800,000 per month, or on an annual basis, close to $10 million. So on the one hand, that is real money, and that is definitely improving the outlook. On the other hand, that is not enough to eliminate the sort of structural gap that we're looking at. And this has been the message that we have been trying to convey, again, as part of the SJ28 process for VRE's kind of near term. As I mentioned, again, once we think that we're sort of back into more normal ridership in September and October, we will take that, we'll incorporate it into the budget, we'll incorporate it into the SJ28. We'll have a new look at, what's the runway, and we will, of course, bring all of that to you. And the last one, we had talked, again, I don't want to give capital the short shrift here, but we do tend to, the beginning of the budget process tends to be a little bit more on the operations, and then we get into the capital a little bit more toward the back end of the process. With the approval last night by NBTC of the system plan, we will be using that as kind of the North Star for making changes to the 6-year capital program. Any sort of, a lot of our near-term projects, of course, they are what they are. But as we need to begin to look towards the outer years of the capital program, we'll be looking at the system plan and what projects do we need to bring into that plan. Obviously, a big part of it every year is finding our cost estimates, our schedules, where do we think the money is going to come from? And so just looking at that last one in particular, where's the money going to come from? The one that's at the top, and Rich has been dedicated towards this over his entire time here. Asset management has to be the first thing that we spend the capital money on. We have to keep the assets that we have in good working order. That's both the rolling stock and all of our yards and stations, all of that. Then after that, we have a lot of our sort of expansion projects. Really, I think the next most important one after that is the new yard facility. The LaFont station and Fourth Track has most of its committed money, but we do still have a gap on the project. We of course don't want to be holding up anything that is a part of the broader sort of Long Bridge and TRB program. So identifying where that money is going to come from is key. Then the next to last one, as the chair mentioned, we are basically ready to go for the first 3 properties on the Manassas line that we're purchasing from VRE. That last one, the operating easement, again, we have a plan in place in terms of accessing existing FTA money. We also have to identify, like Rich noted, a little bit of additional local money. Where are we going to bring that from? But getting that plan in place over the next year to 2 years, very important. And then the last one, probably the one that has the biggest sort of gap, at least in the current year's budget, is the lead track connecting to Broad Run. So again, we will have the property in place. Then the question is how are we going to go out and actually do that construction? So with that, we'll be very happy to answer some questions. Thank you.
I don't recall what the lead track is.
Oh, I'm sorry. So we one of the 4 properties that we're purchasing is mainline right away. Sorry, that we will be able to construct a lead track off of the main line into the station and then into the yard, extending well to the east or to the railroad north, getting us off the main line as we make that move.
And Mike, did you minimize the conflict?
Yeah.
Right there on the main line, so.
And everything both said was 100% correct. And in addition to that, that way we don't have to say Mother May I to Norfolk Southern. If we have our own dedicated track, that was a couple miles of, they still would have that influence. But we have our own dedicated track off their main line. As they do get busier at Manassas Yard, small yard, but still they get busier there. East of there, they're not busy much at all. But Manassas, so that was a point where we made sure to grab that land. It was an option. We discussed about a year ago, we made sure we wanted to take that option to get that land and give it to VRE. So we can build that in the future. We don't say Mother May I in case we need increased service.
Mark, what's just going back to the key issues for 2027, the third one, pandemic funding projections. Where are we with that? I mean, what's the cutoff? Just as a reminder,
So prior to the return to office directives, we were looking at sort of mid fiscal 28.
Okay.
Call it the end of calendar 27. Again, with an additional $10 million a year, let's say, that pushes that out by months, but not by years.
Thank you.
Franklin.
This is just more so for discussion as we go along in the next several months and putting together the budget. With the potential recommendation to increase fares, I will say the fares for VRE are already quite expensive. If you've taken VRE, but obviously it helps provide the revenue we need. But I would just say that, I think I would be more comfortable if we do fare increases, knowing what percentage of our current, ridership, gets those, federal subsidies, because I'm assuming it's probably more than 60%. And that's why we don't hear a lot of complaints about how expensive the fares are, because most of them are being paid for, by the subsidies. But, I know that, if we want to increase ridership to even those outside of the federal bubble, I think what our fares are already at, like, what, 9 each way?
Yeah, depending on the zone.
Yeah, depending on the zone. I mean, that's roughly about almost $20 a day, which is the same amount as parking in a garage to some degree in Washington, DC. Garage may be a little bit more expensive, but you're certainly edging towards, being competitive in terms of pricing. And that kind of almost defeats the purpose. So I just want us to think a little bit more about that. And then I do think we need to talk, and I think this will also depend on our budget, about Saturday service, and exactly when we think we can project to have that come online. And if we think that will help us get to increase, revenue as well, and help to get additional ridership. Someone takes it on the weekend. Hey, this is a pretty nice service. Maybe I should consider taking it to a Nats game during the week, or maybe even to work if I'm in Alexandria or DC. Never thought about taking it. So I do think that Saturday service, while we know we have to have the budget for it, certainly, to sustain it, I do think we need to think more deeply about how that can help with our ridership numbers as well as our revenue.
I mean, if I could, I think at the moment, it's less about budgeting for Saturday service. It's budgeted for. It's about what Mark was touching on, reliability of the experience and the service. I think that's been the primary hesitation. I know there's also, this body has made it pretty clear we're eager to see that happen. I mean, I think we approved it now, maybe two years ago, so I share, a desire to sort of have that be as viable a conversation, over the next few months, and also maybe the extent to which Amtrak partnership, and the Step Up program can perhaps move people towards a concept of Saturday service if they're experiencing, an Amtrak train through a VRE ticket purchase, that they experience as sort of a window into what taking the train might look like on a Saturday and a short haul trip. But just wanted to give that context that I think the budget is less and it's more this service reliability and availability issue. And then Mr. Walkinshaw had his hand up, but did you want to?
Could I just respond to Mr.
Yeah, please.
From a process perspective, I would encourage the board to authorize us to go ahead to have the public participation on the fare increase. And then if we determine that that's not the direction that we want to go, we can certainly back off of that. So just, and then I share your feeling about sort of the level of the fares. And there's a real tension there between if we were to lower the fares and sort of leave some of that transit benefit money on the table from our existing riders versus how much would we draw in new riders. And I think that's a discussion that's worth having. I think the things we've done, like in the inner zones where it's only the flat $5, I think that has encouraged, more people to take the short trips. I think the more that we can maybe look at things like that as well.
Thank you.
Sure.
In full disclosure, it's possible I won't be a member of this board when the budget decisions are made later this year. But I do kind of. I do feel compelled to, last year we had, a vigorous discussion about the fare increases. I said that I thought we should go back to the biennial fare increases and that I would support a fare increase in this year's budget. I also think it would be useful, and look, I just think long-term, I don't think it's tenable for either our fares or our subsidies to not keep pace with CPI at a minimum. I think as we've seen the costs to run the railroad, even separating out expansion or increased service have risen faster than CPI. So at a minimum, I think we need to look at what would it take on a multi-year plan to get both fares and the jurisdictional subsidies back on par with CPI. And, if I'm here in the fall, that's something that I would want to look at. How many biennial cycles might it take to, gently get back into that ballpark?
Yes, Mr. Gordon.
I appreciate everything you just said and completely concur. I mean, and we're dealing with this in Prince William County with our water system, where we didn't keep rates in to match the need to support our water system. And now all of a sudden we've got this massive bow wave costs that now are having to be passed on to our citizens through higher water bills, which is a significant jump. So it's either make small pain increases over time, or you end up with a very painful, and that the big painful one becomes a very negative media story. So the last thing we want to do, and we see this a lot with the federal government, particularly within the Department of Defense, which I deal with a lot in my civilian job, is deferred maintenance. And it is that when we start cutting budgets, we don't keep budgets growing at the right rate. Maintenance is the thing that starts to cost or get pushed aside. And then, of course, you said, that's the most important thing that we have. And yet, when budgets get lean, maintenance tends to be the first thing to get cut. So we don't want to find ourselves in a situation where we have to start cutting or, to maintain our system. In order to have that robust service that and world-class service, the way I would prefer to describe it, is that, it costs money to do that. And so I completely concur with everything you just said, that we really got to look at this from the standpoint of how do we not get ourselves in a hole going forward and getting ourselves out of the hole and keeping up with inflation.
And to tie that all the way around, I mean, one of the big ticket items that was highlighted was the insurance costs. And to the extent that we have an excellent track record, that's certainly helpful in that environment. And so all these things circle back around. It's not just, it's controlling costs, keeping up maintenance also keeps that insurance. To the extent we have control over it, keeping those costs down, we're doing our part with sort of our strong safety record. So I appreciate it in here, Mr. Walkinshaw's comments, but picking, sort of getting the gist of it. I think that's an important point. Mr. Short.
I concur with the comments that have been made, and particularly, I think the board needs to have a broader policy discussion. And the timing on this, I think, could be better, because we've gone through the last few years, we've done different things in terms of increases and subsidies, et cetera, but what is our longer term expectation on ratio of passenger fares to subsidies to whatever else other money that we might have? Well, I think particularly, I realize the timing may not be ideal because Rich is leaving, but I think we still have to have that discussion this fall before we approve the next budget, at least to, even if we don't decide on that, if we will, finally, we need to at least be pointing ourselves in the direction that we think we only want to go in terms of those ratios between the different sources of funding.
Mm-hmm. Mrs. Holmes.
I appreciate all the comments and questions, and but when you talked about the increased ridership and what revenue that brings in, I guess I'm wondering, a lot of that just happened because we had returned to work. And I'm wondering if we know why the people who are not taking VRE, like why people are still in their cars. Some are taking OmniRide, great, or like they're doing that. But like what so I guess I'm wondering, I want to know the why, and I want to know how we could get some of the folks who are taking 95 on the train. Mm-hmm. And how do we go about doing that? Because that's real money. And so part of what we're talking about is increasing fares by whatever, based on the ridership we have, but we still have a lot of empty seats. So,
No, it's a great question because the trains are running with seats, like that cost is sunk. And every person we add does not really add to cost. It just starts to, subtract. And so I think what hopefully Mark and his staff are hearing as well is that I agree with the request broadly to do the public engagement on fares this year. And I think that's part of the engagement as well. If you're not buying a 30 pack, and you're buying the occasional ticket, why is that? Or, when they do the public engagement, not limit it to just our current riders, how would you react to an increase? But to, do engagement that reaches non-riders or past riders who have not returned. And
what would it take to get you to ride? Right? Like, what would that look like? And maybe it's not a price differential, maybe it's a schedule differential, or maybe it's, I don't know, but yes, I didn't mean to interrupt, but.
That's right. Was that a reactive nod to get in the conversation?
Well, just, I think we can bring more information to you. I think the surveys that we've done in the past have absolutely indicated that price is probably number 3 on people's list, that it's reliability, it's that it doesn't, is it getting me where I need to go at the time of day that I need to go? Not that price is not important at all, but they have to view it as, they have to view it as a good option before that even comes in the picture.
Ms. Hayes and then Mr. Knapp.
And, I think the other thing you have to take into consideration is not everybody is going from Spotsylvania or Fredericksburg to DC. There's people that are going, plane or where you can't get there from here on VRE, right? I mean, it's not you could do it if you had multiple different things and it becomes more cumbersome. So I think that's it. I wonder, with like at FAMPO, we talk about the streetlight data, right? And looking at where are they going from. I wonder if they could pull that, or if you guys have access to that.
Well, it just so happens.
Because I think that's part of what we're looking at. We're really thinking that.
We're just updating the subscription.
Okay. Yes, I should have that.
It's been a lot.
But that, because I think there are a lot of people that live in Spotsylvania that aren't necessarily just going up to DC, and are coming up north, but they're not going up there. And the other thing is, some companies, private business, will pay for the HOV lanes. Will reimburse for the HOV lanes. So
that's plays me. I think that's where I'm going. Is how can VRE and PRTs, how can we all get people to take, and I think part of it is the convenience. You're saying the 1 and 2 numbers, but part of it is the mindset. And the mindset piece is kind of where I'm getting at before. I feel like we're missing people because some people just don't, they don't realize that, how many cars we're taking off the road, what that looks like with a lot of different things, or that you can do work on the train. I think part of it is, and I follow VRE on Instagram, and I feel like you all do a nice job with that, but I'm wondering if there isn't something else we could do to market VRE just to get more riders.
I'm going to hand it, I think Mr. Karen is still in the queue, and I see Rich, but I will just, say, I think part of that's on us as in our respective boards and our respective constituencies, to the extent that we as a board, and individually sort of believe in the service, and for climate reasons, for safety reasons, for sustainability, all for traffic, all the things we're talking about. I do think that's part of it as well. I think VRE absolutely has to, think about its marketing, think about its outreach, but the kind of mindset shift that, that you're describing, it is got to happen beyond simply VRE appearing to be marketing for its own existence, you know what I mean? And us getting at, this is a larger cultural benefit. This is a larger societal benefit. This is a quality of life issue. And VRE happens to be an available, tool to solve it. I mean, yesterday I took a Capital bike share home from the airport. it's the first time I'd ever, but like, it's that kind of, and I posted about it, and I'm now saying it in this forum. So I think like we have lots of opportunities that we have to take to give examples of that kind of, paradigm shift. Mr. Schofield, and I'm sorry, Mr. Karen.
I just wanted to say to Ms. Hayes, Nick would kill to get up here and talk about our streetlight day for you guys. Whenever you schedule it for August.
Mr. Karen,
It's all on you.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the wisdom of trying to moderately adjust to CPI is basic, right? Everything else is actually overperforming CPI, which means that we constantly underfunding the system. So that's structurally not sustainable. The problem is that yes, I've lived in very congested urban areas. And I remember one specifically that had, like I-95, constant congestion. It was very predictable. So huge electronic boards that said, well, your travel time to the DC du jour is, 35 minutes. Second line, it's 10 minutes. So it's a constant reminder that you have an alternative. Take it. It's a constant reminder that you have an alternative. Basically, in every entrance into the highway system, there was a reminder that you have an alternative. I mean, here you will be challenged to figure out where there are some signs that say a VRE station close by, but it doesn't really say what and et cetera. There is no public signage, et cetera. And I know that Transurban won't like that because we would put the competition in front of them. By the way, private companies paying for tolls is completely beating the system, right? Because it reduces the incentive of somebody to do something else. And I'm not so sure that we should be, at any rate, supportive of that. I begin to believe that this is an issue, right? Then there's another one. I think at the same time, when we ask our riders to pay a little bit more, we should also work with those who pay, who give transportation benefits and see whether we can begin to negotiate also. That's also relevant for WMATA, a different idea of actually paying the benefits directly to the transportation carrier, so that we not pay for service, which is now the federal law, and Congress may change that at some point. But basically, say we pay for the availability of the transportation for you. So here, this is your entrance to your system. You can use that. And I think that this would really change the equation, because this would provide the liquidity upfront, very predictable, by the way. I mean, it would take, one of the biggest problems here is to know how often, et cetera. And in that case, you would have a good part already in the system. And I think that's critical for a commuter system. So that's for that. But yeah, marketing right now, it's not only VREs good, but it's far better than I-95. We have to name the competition. Mm-hmm. And the competition is extremely expensive. I mean, just showing people how much it really costs to own and operate a vehicle and go. One vehicle is, it will be eye-opening for a lot of people.
And to that point, EPRA had it in their slide last night. It would cost $12 billion to build another lane between Thornburg and 495. $12 billion. It will cost half that to make the kind of investments we are talking about making in rail. Did I roughly boil that slide down correctly?
And in that lane you add, all this other extra capacity you added will be taken up in a very short period of time. It's a year or two or something of that nature, compared to rail, which is much more sustainable.
So I wanted to throw that, like, you're right. I mean, we have to, a comment I made in another context about sort of when we talk about what various rail investments will cost, we have to always compare it back to the alternative. Because we shouldn't just be looking at, well, we're proposing spending, $3 million on this investment in rail. What would that same movement of people, cost if we were to do it another way? Because the investments are going to have to be made. People are going to continue to live in this area. They're going to continue to move to Stafford and Prince William, and so the money is going to be spent. The question is, which methods have the deepest ROI and the most sustainable, impact to their expansion? And lanes have limited impact to the sustainability of what they do, and they're expensive. The other thought I have while listening to all this marketing is there's some smart people at VRE who are good at catchy logos, but the trains themselves might be some of our best advertising tools as they pass you by.
Be careful.
That's
my staff.
Oh, okay. Maybe there's rules against this? I don't know. Okay. But I was just, I to listen to Mr. Carantonis talk about billboards and such, I was thinking, because I know how often when I'm stuck somewhere and I see just a bus in a BRT lane going by me, that bus is advertising, that service. And the last thing, and then I'll get to Ms. Vasquez Luna, said, for some reason, I'm just blanking at the moment. I know WMATA has an income-based fare opportunity program that is in place. Does VRE, we've never really had to look into something like that, but we don't currently have something like that, right? Okay, but so we do have a seniors program that allows a discounted ticket. So perhaps as we get into a budget conversation about raising fares, recognizing that big delta between the current benefits increase and what our fares have gone up, but recognizing we're expanding our market potentially to people who do not receive transit benefits, to the extent that person makes, less than $50,000 a year, but is still traveling from Prince William to DC, maybe that's another, avenue we look into, because that person, if they're sitting in a currently empty seat, even if they pay a reduced, fare out of pocket, is still net positive to a point. And I'll let Mark decide what that point is. But anyway, Ms. Vasquez Lunas, I'm sorry, you had your hand up. And then Meg, I haven't forgotten you. I want to let Meg get in on the conversation as well.
Thank you so much. For me, it will be, yes, an increase when we have the feedback. An increase on the fees, but everything has to be moderate. We still have to actively look and where we can save costs. And I'm not saying it's not happening. It's just my way of thinking. And then of course the localities. We all know we have to come up with something. It's just we're getting pulled from everywhere. I would like to see a different approach. Everybody already talked about the marketing, but I will say, I understand PRTC is more active because the coverage and everything that, that they do. But I want to say last year or prior years, I have seen a lot more in the summer to try to bring families or more marketing, to invite, people to ride, because I think once you have a good experience, it is easier for you to use it and make it easy. But I know you have great staff. I appreciate it. I don't think anybody has said it, the videos that you've been doing. I believe that is gonna be a very, it's a cost effective, but a big highlight. And I think that my ring increases. I don't remember when, but I remember there was a report that the monthly passes had increased. When my ask will be what else can we do to actively do that while we are approaching this budget. I know the changes in Manassas might bring more people, but my residents' comments or what I have received is about being reliable. I remember we had an issue with what was it? Santa was coming. Santa always comes in the train, and they had to go get it. And I think everybody understands that, but just to make sure that they understand. It's possible even if you're delayed. The numbers get better, and we continue to work on that. Yes.
Ms. Baumke? Can you turn your volume up just a titch, or can we turn her up? Try again, Meg.
that better?
A little, any closer you can get would be great.
Okay, how about that?
Yes.
Okay, so I only had two things. I wanted to ask Mark first. On your very first slide about the process and the timeline, at what point do you give, I guess I'll say, estimated budget numbers to the local jurisdictions? I know we don't approve the estimated budget until in January.
So we will come in September with a total bottom line contribution. And then once we do the master agreement survey, which will be in early October, again, like I mentioned, hopefully we'll be able to turn that analysis around a little quicker this year because we're doing it all online. So I would hope for, say, early November to take that bottom line number and allocate it across each of the individual jurisdictions.
Okay, so I just know that on all the other regional boards that we work with, we receive an estimated, as you know, you guys are building your budget as soon as the other one is approved and looking forward. And we receive a lot of our regional estimates in October because our board is presenting to us kind of our estimated numbers in November and December, just discussing things. So if you aren't giving them numbers till November, December, are they just working off of last year's numbers? Do you know?
Yeah, I would, I'm not, hypothetically, suppose we came to September with I'm just going to use a high number here, 10% increase in the jurisdictional contribution. I think the best practice that the jurisdictions could do in the short term would be to take what they had last year and increase it by 10%. But knowing that it depends pretty heavily on the ridership, I would just caveat that until we know what the results are from the survey in October.
Okay, I would just like to encourage your staff and board members for our jurisdictions to have estimates as soon as possible. That's all I'm asking for. And then my other question is, I know we've been talking about the insurance increases that are just, the numbers are staggering. My question is, because you and I have talked about this offline, how far have we gone? How are those conversations going with the bigger nationwide group? Can you give us an update on that?
In terms of the Commuter Rail Coalition?
Yes.
Yes, that there were some discussions a couple years ago, and then they kind of went quiet, and they have been starting up again in earnest. The focus right now has been on a little bit more of a technical issue in terms of how quickly do the commuter rails have to put in place the additional insurance that's going to be required when the cap is increased. In terms of a larger strategic approach to it, I think we're still in more the beginning stages there.
Okay, who is leading that effort?
I would say it really is the Commuter Rail Coalition right now.
Which we are a part of.
Which we're a part of, of course. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
I think anything that we can do to help push that effort, and just, as you know, staying engaged in it is just really, really important. So anything that you can bring back to the board as you have information would be helpful.
Absolutely.
And thank you so much for your presentation. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Mark, any other response to? I wasn't sure if I cut you off there.
No, I'm fine.
Okay. Okay. Has this been a useful, I think, does anybody else have comments or questions or guidance?
I have a plug.
Feedback, please.
I have a plug.
Yes.
So just picking up off of the comments made before about getting people off of 95 onto VRE trains and some of these other comments, I just want to make a plug. Now that the system plan 2050 has been adopted, one of the next pieces in that continuing process is staff will be reaching out to the various jurisdictions. We like to do it at the county supervisor level and basically come down and present those
what the system plan is. What we hope is it not only informs, but also potentially can engage some further discussion. I'll give you this perfect example of where I think, it's not just something VRE can solve, but you guys sitting around the table is, and Miss Bailey, I'm gonna pick on a topic that I know you're familiar with, but since, pre-COVID, I'm gonna talk about Quantico Marine Corps Base. We lose riders on VRE in favor of driving I-95 because there is no circulation, around the base. In other words, there's no transportation around the base. People don't want to walk more than 15 minutes or 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And I know Ms. Franklin's involved in this as well, but, and they tell us, and particularly, so they may switch to back to VRE, in the cooler months when but they're very particular, and rightly so. The cooler months when it's not raining, all that kind of stuff, simply because there isn't a way to get around the base. So those are things that can be solved at, I think at the collaborative level, but nonetheless, look for that road show with the System Plan 2050. That could be an opportunity to get, the different, jurisdictions and us collaborating more. I'm not saying we don't, but I always say we probably could do more. So that's my plug, Madam Chair.
Somewhere Nick's ears just pricked up at 7 opportunities to present the System Plan 2050. And I love that point, just because I think sometimes the solution to more riders might actually lie outside VRE. I mean, when you arrive, let's say from VRE at Alexandria Station, the free trolley is there to take you up and down King Street. So you might be more inclined to leave your car at home in Stafford and Spotsy, come up for the day, take VRE, because when you arrive in Alexandria, you've got the trolley to pick up, or there's a metro station right there. So perhaps, adjacent to some of the stations, maybe there's a circulator, that takes people to the dense part of your respective areas. So I think that's the other ways that we can collaborate. If there's no other comments or questions for Mr. Schofield or on this topic, I don't see any. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think we've given you a lot to chew on before the call. Okay, with that, we are going to move into closed session pursuant to the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, section, I'm sorry, Ms. Bailey. No, I'm used to. Is it okay if I read them out?
Pictures.
All right, I know, no. Here's the roll. Please. The vice chair has a motion I would ask her to read.
Madam Chair, I have a motion that I'd like to do.
Please, Ms. Bailey.
Pursuant of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act, section 2.2-3711-A of the Code of Virginia, I move that the VRE Operations Board convene a closed session for the purpose of discussing a personnel matter involving candidates for appointments by the commission.
Is there a second? All right, Mr. Karantonis, thank you. So there's a motion and a second. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Ms. Bagley?
Aye.
Ms. Bailey?
Aye.
Mr. Stork?
Aye.
Ms. Hayes?
Aye.
Ms. Bonke?
She might have opted that she had to depart.
Ms. Franklin?
Aye.
Mr. Gordy? Ms. Holmes?
Aye.
Mr. Karantonis? Ms. Vasquez?
Yes, aye.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Aye.
Ms. Mensing?
I'm gonna have to leave and not go into closed, so should I abstain or say no?
Here's authorizing.
So you won't be able to certify at the end.
Yeah, that's my question.
So,
Yeah. Yes.
yeah,
Oh, we still have.
I'll say.
yeah, so do you have a quorum without her? Okay, so you can say no, and then you and I, right? She would abstain from this vote.
Abstain.
I'll abstain. Abstain.
And Mr. Waukesha. And Madam Chair, that passes.
All right, so we're going to move into closed session. In the interest of the fact that we do have the ledge meeting after, can we aim to be back in by 10:50 or in your seats before 10:50? Before. That's 6 minutes from now? Okay, thank you. That'll let you guys, we don't have anybody.
I know.
It's a reminder.
And she had been mostly.
I'll be passing on, I'll be back.
And I think she, but she was a teacher. Thank you.
Gentlemen, let us know when you're ready. I can sign a note. Sign a note. Get out of trouble.
I'll say.
Madam Chair, I move that the VRE Operations Board certify that. Oh, good, thank you. Okay. Madam Chair, I move that the VRE Operations Board certifies that to the best of each member's knowledge, with no individual member dissenting at the just concluded closed session, that only public business matters lawfully exempted from open meeting requirements under the Freedom of Information Act were discussed, and only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed session was convened were heard, discussed, and considered.
Second.
All right, there's a motion and a second. If the clerk could call the roll.
Ms. Bagley,
Aye.
Ms. Bailey,
Aye.
Mr. Stewart,
Aye.
Ms. Hayes,
Aye.
Ms. Blumke, Ms. Franklin,
Aye.
Mr. Gordy,
Aye.
Ms. Holmes,
Aye.
Mr. Karen Tonis,
Yes.
Ms. Vasquez,
Yes.
Mr. McLaughlin, Mr. Walkinshaw. And Madam Chair, that is a unanimous vote.
Okay, so we are back in public session. We just have left ops board member time. I will kick off by unfortunately acknowledging this would have been Steve McIsaac's last meeting. He wasn't able to be with us, but if he had been, we would have made him sufficiently uncomfortable with praise and thank yous. So I don't want to miss that opportunity. No?
I was gonna say, it's what took away the fun.
Yeah, I know. It's less fun roasting somebody, right, who isn't here.
That's not good.
But we obviously do appreciate Steve's long record of service in the county, in the transit space. I mean, it covered over 30 years. You know, I discovered in the CEO search history process that Steve even acted as acting CEO for a period of time for VRE many years ago. So thank you very much to Steve for his time. He is still with the organization through, I think, mid-September, but he will retire just shy of our next meeting. I also wanted to just take a moment to note that last night, NVTC did also approve the contract for our new CLO. Her name is Min Chow Kaur. She is currently the Arlington County Attorney, so some of our members are familiar with and heartily endorse her work. We are very excited to see her at our next meeting. So Ms. Kaur will join us just in time for our September meeting, and we're very excited for what she will bring to the future of that role. With that, have a great summer. We'll be busy, stay safe, and I'll pass to Ms. Bailey.
Wow, you said a mouthful. Congratulations to Ms. Core, is it Core?
Core.
Ms. Core, yeah. And hope you have a great summer, and we had a good meeting today, so thank you.
I want to thank the chair for her tremendous amount of work over the last, really, couple months. And doing that in addition to. I mean, it's really, and maybe the sad thing is that there's a whole lot more to come, so whether you like it.
Maybe in a few months, hopefully.
Obviously, we're where we are because of the amount of work that Sarah's done. I very much appreciate that, and obviously want to thank Steve for his service, his decades of service, and frankly being a key foundational part of how VRE got here and why we are where we are, and obviously the future looks very bright.
Well, I echo those sentiments that you so quickly put out there. And I also want to thank Rich for coming down to Spotsylvania and meeting with us about the crossing elimination program. And, you know, really, we have one crossing in Spotsylvania County, that's the Mile Road and Benchmark crossing, where we've had multiple injuries and fatalities. It's a crossing that we need to address, and we'll be talking more about that. I think some of you all have heard about that crossing. nauseum, but anyway, thank you for coming down and doing it.
Absolutely. I hinted at this earlier, but, and I'm superstitious and take nothing for granted, but it is possible that this will be my last, meeting as a member of this board, and just wanted to express my deep appreciation and respect for the work that you all do. Board members, incredible VRE staff and team. It's been such an honor to work with you all in this capacity, and I will continue to work with you in any capacity I might be in the future, but just wanted to express my appreciation for the great work that you all have done, and I'm proud to be a small part of our efforts here, and look forward to continuing that maybe in a different way moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman.
Just a couple of things. Steve is not here, but wanted to thank him for his service. I remember when we brought him on to be in-house when we were contracting him out at first. And I think that worked out pretty well. So thank you, Steve, for your work. Also, some Storks Point, Sarah been doing an incredible job over the past, what, year?
It's only been 6 months.
It just feels
Here.
it's crazy.
It's just July.
Yeah, but you move with great expertise in all this, so thank you. And then also to Mr. Walkinshaw, we served together as chair and vice chair of VRE. And it's always been a pleasure working with you. I've learned a lot from you. I think we started on the board together in 2019, all of us when we came in. So very proud of you and hoping for the best because we have another ally up in DC, and that'll be super helpful. So thank you. And then just a side note, I just attended the National Association of Counties Conference in Philadelphia, where we did talk about a number of transportation issues that are impacting other jurisdictions around the United States. And to no surprise, a lot of people are dealing with the same issues that we are. Obviously, they don't have its impact of the return to work policies that we're dealing with in the DMV area, but that's obviously been very beneficial to transportation organizations. But just wanted to kind of flag that. I'll pass along.
Thank you. So I second everything that's been said already about Steve. I mean, it's the second time that I have bid farewell to Steve. As you know, Arlington County sends VRE always their best, and we look forward to. I mean, I can assure you that working with Michelle will be absolutely great. Steve is a very special type of lawyer and person. I know that he always loved VRE more than he ever loved our job. I know that for a fact. That was just emotionally important to him, I believe. I mean, something with trains, I don't know, maybe they're cool after all. So Sarah, truly excellent leadership here. Thank you so much for that. We all know how much of a pain it is to face changes in personnel, and especially in a smaller organization, that's never something to to take for granted, and it takes a lot of time and investment from our chair. So thank you both, chair and vice chair, Andrea Bailey, and James. Awesome job here. So I didn't like the little maybe in a maybe we will be. No, we will continue to be in touch here because I think that's what we do here is in a microcosm is of relevance to the entire Commonwealth, and to the regional Commonwealth and to the entire nation. I mean, as a country, we need to start climbing back in some places, and transportation is one very big field of improvement here. So thank you for that.
I just want to associate myself with comments about Sarah and about James. We met a few years ago. You came on board and immediately thrown into the CEO search. Got it. Fortunately, Rich. Thank you for everything you've done. You've helped me work through some issues with Fairfax County to our resolution. So thank you. You will be missed, not forgotten, and you will probably see some of us soon. Not changing anything now.
Nothing for me.
I too want to thank Steve. I haven't had a chance to know him very long, but I sit beside Michelle Roble, who's our county attorney during our board's meeting, and she sings Steve's praises all the time. And if she has high value for anyone, it's worth taking note. And so I know that they've had a close relationship, and the time that I've had to spend with next one with Steve will be. It has always been very pleasant, so we're definitely going to be missed. And you know, Jim, just you know, the things about DC, you know, they know the cost of everything, the value of nothing. So just ask you to keep that in mind. I'm almost confident that of where you're going to end up, and but you know, we were on the Hill together a long time ago, and look forward to having you back there and serving the people of Virginia in our nation's capital. So.
I would also like to thank Steve, and it's like he's there.
I know.
Like we all look over there like, oh, yeah. Thanks, Steve, and welcome, and ciao. And congratulations in advance, good luck. So maybe that's not superstitious. It's been a pleasure. And I just wanted to, like, in the spirit of safety that is always part of VRE, is to remind people, like in the summer, a lot of people are in bodies of water. And I got a text alert last night that they were doing a rescue on the Rappahannock River. So just to reinforce that, you know, people please use proper water safety. And if you're going to be in the river, you really need a life vest. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Well, first, just a reminder for the public, you know, the VRE is fun and you can take the train with your family. It's only a month or less than a month left for kids to go back to school. So it is a great opportunity, especially in Manassas. I mean, we have different stops that you can use. I thank this committee for allowing me to serve in the search for the new CEO. I'm looking forward into that position. And congratulations, Steve. And you know, all I want to say, you know, a message for the staff and everybody that worked with us. That, you know, this board is working hard and is committed to make sure that we had a smooth transition. And knowing that how many years everybody has served, you know, it's a long-lasting impact, and we want to make sure that we continue to move forward with the vision that they had. So thank you, and have a great summer. I'll see you in September.
Oh, that's a great message to end on. We're adjourned, everybody. Have a great summer.
All right.
Yeah. But legislative committee, don't go. Legislative.
Okay.
If you can.
Don't think that legislative is a mistake here for you. Hold on.
I'm gonna duck in.
Mr. Walkinshaw, congratulations. I've only been here 6 months, but you know, I know you're good grade.
Pretty excited.
I finally
Tom.
remember I had met you when I used to lobby, which it was many, many years ago.
our congressional delegation in Virginia, one of the things we have never had is somebody from the Northern Virginia area who was on the T&I committee. So if in the future there was a chance for one of our congressmen to be on the T&I committee, that would be.
That actually
Throw that out there. If anybody.
Well done.
All right, so jumping in, I just recap of 2025.
Hakeem.
We only had one little ask in the Virginia legislative agenda, and that had to do with the insurance tax that we were paying, where in effect, the brokers had to pay this tax and then they were charging us back. So we were basically paying the tax. That exemption got passed, and in fact, because our new insurance just took effect July 1st, I've gotten the bills for that, and they calculated what that tax would have been if we weren't exempt, and it came out to $98,400 something dollars. So just to see that, you know, even these little bills that we do from time to time have an effect on our budget. We're saving $100,000 a year, and that's, you know, going forward. So even when they're not huge, at least every year we can try and make, you know, adjustments here and there. Jumping into presentation of the initial draft here. We'll start with the federal stuff. There is not in.
Just for a second, can we have an idea of the timeline for?
Yeah, I'm sorry, probably should have mentioned that. So normally what we do is we have one legislative committee here in July. We do another legislative committee in September. Coming out of that, we have a fairly, you know, well-baked agenda that we bring as a legislative agenda that we bring as an info item to the entire board in October, and then ask the board to, the action is a recommendation because the commissions actually have to approve a legislative agenda. So in November would be the action to send it up to the commissions, and then the commissions will vote on it in December. Normally, I won't promise, but normally that's because that's when they're voting on theirs as well. So, and ours ends up being sort of incorporated in theirs. So we've got a couple of months of this. You know, again, this is just I've thrown together a lot of this is things that you've seen already, things from last year. Open the discussion, and then if there are any other specific things we want to add, we can either talk about that today or we can talk about it in September. And then there's pretty good discussion with the entire group when we present it as an info item as well.
Question.
Yes.
About the timeline. So anything that we wanted to happen in the Virginia General Assembly, we would need to get that there before December. No, I mean.
Yes, it works out fine. Yeah, it always works.
As long if we are fairly confident in what's going to be in the legislative agenda in the October range, then we can start talking to legislators that put that in. Yes.
Yeah, actually, we just had this discussion in Prince William County. Agree with that, but to Ms. Holmes' point, if we can at least maybe verbalize to members of our General Assembly kind of what we're thinking, because we've been getting pressure to submit legislative items much earlier, like literally in like 2 months. And so even if we don't have a document ready, even if we can just verbalize and communicate to at least our important members of the General Assembly what we're thinking, we can at least start keeping that in mind.
And to us, so that we can talk to them about those things.
Yeah.
Correct. Well, this is the purpose of this exercise here, so that's
Okay.
certainly enough. The second thing, if there is something that's not here, it's especially salient or, you know, for great concern of you, here are the ears that need to hear that so that they begin the whisper campaign.
Yes.
You know, yeah.
Okay, so I will jump into what I put together. And again, a lot of this would have just come from the 2025 agenda as well. The big thing on the federal level that we're looking at is surface transportation reauthorization. That's where they're going to set the amount that they can, you know, then go and appropriate in future years. It's normally 5 or 6. It's normally a 5-year authorization. So those discussions are, going on in earnest. And of course, on the federal side, the vast majority of the things that we do, we're doing that in association with the rest of the industry. We're with, going with APTA. We're going up with the Commuter Rail Coalition and others. There's very little federal stuff that we're going out on our own for. Reauthorization, of course, the rail passenger transportation liability cap, which got discussed a little bit during the budget discussion today. You want to come up and talk about that a little bit? There is at the CRC right now discussions of how do we fix this, not just the, how fast we have to get the new insurance when the cap goes up, which is going to be this coming February. But how do we just get that cap lowered? And there's been some discussions at the CRC about legislation that would help lower that. So our federal lobbyists, introduce yourself and let them know what you've been talking to, not necessarily on our behalf. This is more of a CRC discussion that we're all a part of.
Hi, Outcome Matter, Pearsman, Cargo Infrastructure. We've been spending a lot of time working with Commuter Rail Coalition and some of my other commuter rail clients that we work through directly with VRE. And we've been talking a lot about timing of stuff, timing of when each commuter rail agency will know how much additional liability coverage they'll have to purchase to give them more time to find that in the marketplace. That's one issue we've been working on. I think when we talk to committee staff and the offices, generally no objection to that. It's something that can undoubtedly we can probably put in surface transportation authorization, but it won't be in time for this upcoming late December or January action where you'll have you'll have the big 5-year jump. The liability insurance every 5 years jumps up by COLA, essentially CPI index, and surface authorization. Is scheduled right now to go through the House this fall, but I think that's optimistic. The Senate is a slower track. Nothing expires until next year, and Congress doesn't really do things until they actually expire. So, secondly, we're focused on trying to drive the cap down. That's very difficult to do for lots of political reasons. We've been making a pitch to Republican Senate offices to link PTC, implementation of PTC, to the liability cap. When PTC was mandated in 2020, your risk dropped a lot across the board for all commuter rail. That did not get reflected in the liability cap, right? You're now paying more per dollar, you're paying more, and you're paying more because it keeps rising while your risk has dropped. So we can make a pretty strong argument that those things have been delinked and we need to bring them back together. The challenge with that is there are those in Washington, D.C. who would not like to see liability caps ever fall for political reasons and their own self-interest. So it's not likely to succeed to make that argument in the short term, but we're using it to change the debate more about this issue. The third thing we're working on is giving clear instruction, clear option for states to set up their own insurance pools, essentially, or self-insure, and allowing states to, they can already do it today, of course, but making it clear from the federal perspective that they can do that, and that they can essentially help VRE and states sort of proud states support routes and intercity rail move out of the insurance market altogether and self-insure at the state level. The one thing I think we can do to make that easier for states is make them eligible for a RIF loan. RIF loans are railroad financing loans that are low-interest loans from the federal government. We would make states eligible for those loans. They already are, but they can be eligible for these purposes, setting up self-insurance or a pool of some sort. That would allow states to very cheaply self-insure. And people like VRE would probably end up paying for that loan, but it would be a much cheaper than what VRE pays today for insurance in the private market. So these are the 3 or 4 different things we're approaching, talking lots of different people about them right now, trying to get the commuter rail coalition itself to endorse some of these ideas, and give Congress the the easiest thing that politically they can move on a bipartisan basis.
And just as an aside to that, we talk a lot about this cap is going up in February. Myself and Charlotte, who work on our insurance program, I will let you know that when we were talking to the underwriters about our 2026 program, which just went into effect, we basically had them go to the underwriters and say, look, we're going to need this. Can we get some sort of handshake deal that you will be willing to, give us the additional insurance that we will need come February, March of next year? And that went really well. We are an excellent risk. When we were there, they told us they're looking for their entire book. They're looking to increase cost by about 12%. They told us we're such a good risk, 8% is what we should be expecting. We ended up at 6%. They love us. They know how safe we are. The entire presentation I give sounds like Rich talking. How that's all we talk about is how safe. We're not going to do it if we don't do it safely. And it resonates with them and they get it. So we've done very well there. Now, Mark, when I tell him 6%, goes, that's not good. It is when everybody else is getting 8 to 12. So we'll take it. So that's just an aside on the insurance. But we do think that eventually, as Mark was saying, we're getting to the point where our insurance is 10% of our operating. That's just not sustainable, especially if it continues to grow. And that's every transit agency or every commuter rail in the country. So this is going to have to get dealt with at this point over the next couple of years. It's just going to be a hard fight. Any questions about what we've talked about so far? All right. Rich had talked about, we're going to go to the jurisdictions with the 2050 plan, do a little dog and pony show for them. We're also going to do that up on the Hill. We're going to talk to all the, our delegation and staff and committee staff, if we can, what our future hopefully looks like, and then start talking about how are there federal policies, are there federal grants, different ways to have the feds be involved in what our future looks like. Let's see, I mentioned grants a little bit there. There aren't a lot of discretionary grant opportunities for us. There are some. Most of them we would end up sort of partnering with the state. Mike has offered to talk through a lot of those opportunities, so we're going to continue to do that. And then once we find those types of opportunities that we can apply for, Cardinal helps us sort of run the traps up there and make sure everybody knows how great our application is and why we should at least get in the pipeline for some of this funding. And we will continue to do that. And, as always, we keep an eye on regulations and rulemakings, those types of things. That's probably enough. I know you guys don't want to drag this out too long. It's late on a Friday in the summer. Any questions on the federal side?
We're good. The surface transportation funding, the 5-year,
authorization, yeah.
The authorization, how much is it infected or impacted by the current?
I don't know. Right now,
Almost not at all.
Yeah.
Well, no.
Bills and rescission bills of Congress really focus on transportation at this point. And we don't anticipate seeing that happen. House appropriations, which is transportation bill and House for annual appropriations, just came to committee, and the only thing they cut there is COG funding, which is actually important part of funding for all transit. But it's not going to survive the Senate. The Senate will just, and the Senate wasn't even too terrible just because there's current pipeline Senate.
Right, and that's also a program that it's fairly unlikely, at least right now, that we would be going after anyway. The upside to that appropriations discussion is that the formula programs did well, and that's where we get the vast majority of our federal money.
Good to know. Sorry for asking because I never feel comfortable.
All right, if we want to jump on the state side, before we go into the actual things that I put there, Amy is here, and if you want to give a little bit of a, we do not have good news about what the state budget is going to be coming.
Jones? Yeah, I'm the office for VRE in Richmond, Virginia, and happy to be here today. I was talking to Joe and Kate actually this week and just kind of giving us a quick snapshot of like, what's going on based on the national stuff coming down. There was a presentation, a very brief presentation, but very grim news on what the Medicaid impacts are going to be in Virginia, right? So, I do think that, the general fund money, we've had a lot of surplus for a lot of years. I don't think that's going to be the case anymore. There's going to be a lot of tough decisions that are going to have to be made. I mean, there was just one portion of the Medicaid change that's going to cost hospitals in Virginia and really our critical care hospitals $26 billion with a B. That was just one part of the Medicaid cuts that were coming down from the federal government.
And that's a $26 billion cut?
Yes, because of the way that, because apparently it's about how states can direct their Medicaid payments. So they can, right now you can pay over Medicare rates for some of the hospitals that have really high Medicaid patients or uninsured, et cetera. So like VCU, UVA, Children's, King's Daughters Children's Hospital, Chesapeake. And then there's like one other hospital that are sort of those critical care hospitals that get paid a certain percentage over Medicare rates with Medicaid money. The new law says you can only pay 100%. You cannot pay over 100%, and some of these places get 200% of Medicare. And so that number ends up being $26 billion from just those 5 or 6 hospitals. And those are the critical care ones. And so that doesn't even count like all the different eligibility issues. They have no numbers on that yet. So it's not a, I don't want to be super doom and gloom, but I just think there's going to be a lot of impacts that are going to start being felt. I mean, we have a couple of different committees that have been meeting to talk about what might happen. But until these bills pass and people can really kind of dig into them and see what it's going to look like, particularly for Virginia, we'll see a whole lot more about the impacts of that. So
6 billion is insane.
Yes, very.
Utterly, absolutely insane.
Yeah, right. That's right.
So that has. Okay, you get it out.
Yeah.
So that is immediate, or is there a targeted timeframe?
So I think that the timeframes to me are still a little unclear. I have to say, like DMAS is the organization that gave the presentation, and they're still trying to kind of compile everything since it only happened last week. They had like 5 days to do this presentation, so it was a little vague, but there were parts. So I think some of it kicks in like 2026 and then 2027. I think it's probably 2027, but knowing it's coming down the pike is going to be a big impact, obviously. And we have our new 2-year budget that we have to do in Virginia, right? So the outgoing governor, so Governor Youngkin is going to put forward a 2-year budget in December for the General Assembly. The General Assembly will obviously take that and amend it probably quite a bit. And then whoever the incoming governor is will also have a chance to make some amendments too, but they won't have their own budget until they'll be able to make amendments to the next year and then their own budget after that. So it's a kind of a complicated process in Virginia where the outgoing governor writes the budget. But the General Assembly gets to amend it obviously quite a bit. So, but I just wanted to kind of give everybody that little bit of a snapshot because I know we've all been talking just in theoreticals of like what's going to happen, but that was just a piece that I was shocked that the legislators who were on the committee were like, you could tell in their voices, they were all like, I'm sorry, what is that number? Like, I mean, just like the B, like I just did not expect that kind of, so it's like these small changes they made in the law that really are going to have such huge impact on the state's ability to be able to do that. They also cut the provider tax. So in Virginia, the when we expanded Medicaid in 2018, the way that Virginia pays for their piece of it, it's a 90-10 split for the new population of Medicaid. 90% from the feds, 10% Virginia. Virginia actually doesn't pay that 10%. They actually put a tax on the hospitals, and the hospitals create enough money to pay that 10% piece themselves. The federal government has also said there's a limit on how much you can do that now. So our tax right now is 6%, so it pays for all the folks in Virginia, like the 600,000 people. They're saying they have every year it's going to go down by 0.5% until it gets down to 3.5. So it'll be half of what we can do now.
That we can tax the hospitals.
That's right.
Okay.
Right. That's right. So then the thing is that then Virginia will have to eat the rest of that cost somehow of that 10% and figure out what that number is. If they want to keep those, they would have to pay that with general fund money. Because that money would not be there anymore. That comes from there.
So bottom line, then the fiscal space of Virginia is like reduced to.
That's right, that's right. Now, I will say this, I mean, obviously, then we look back and I think all y'all know about DMV moves and the SC28, trying to figure out how to pay for transportation, how to pay for transit in Virginia. That's Metro, that's VRE, that's all our systems. I mean, I think we're all looking at different like ways to increase fees and taxes. So that's more dedicated funding, so that's gonna be different because that's not gonna be going into that general fund. But what I think we're gonna see is there's gonna probably have to be a need for a lot of revenue for a lot of different things. And so there's gonna be a lot of pressure on a lot of things, and the General Assembly will have to make some really tough decisions. And especially if we have an all Democratic majority, they're gonna have to make some really tough decisions coming down from the Trump administration. So it'll be a really it'll be an interesting year, and it's always a hard year when you have a new administration coming in anyway, no matter who it is, just because there's always a lot of transition and it takes people a long time to get to speed. And so it'll be an interesting year. But I just wanted to let everybody know that. I didn't mean to depress everybody on Friday. It is what it is. But the impacts are there, and we'll certainly work with process with you. So I just wanted to kind of let it. Right.
So yeah, what I'd hope when I put this together is that the sort of big part of this agenda was, hey, SJ28 DMV moves, there's going to be a big push for transportation funding, and we are part of that. We are arm in arm with WMATA, with the regional agencies. You know, we always get called out as one of the agencies that they are hoping to help fund. We will still continue to do that, but yes, now the legislators are going to have to be weighing, yes, we need transportation funding, but now we need to build this, what could be $35 billion hole in their. But that's what we're going to do. We're going to be in the trenches with everybody else once, SJ28 comes out with the recommendations, and once the ideas for policy moving forward, assuming we agree with it, somewhere along the way it doesn't work for VRE, then we'll have to work through that. But we expect that, it's not just going to be about WMATA. It's going to be about WMATA, VRE, and the local jurisdictions. We can all go down there together and make the case for how important this is.
Well, this may have significant consequences for VRE, so especially as J28. We will hear from them when. I mean, I believe that they want now September.
Yeah.
So the next meeting about J28 is likely going to be in early October. That is actually when, and VRE is a part of this, is really getting provided to the subcommittee. What's the ask? Right? It's literally the dollars.
Yeah.
And again, those aren't dollars for 10 years from now. Those are literally what we need to be starting packets to grow
Next fiscal year.
So that's all of our local bus systems as well as VRE. Those are still out there. Those are numbers have not been given to the subcommittee, but they plan on talking about that at their October meeting. After the election in November, there will be their final meeting, and that's where the SJ28, and again, just as a reminder, that's Senator Evan, that's Delegate Sickles, and then there's other key members of appropriations and transportation. So those are our General Assembly members that are going to be in a meaningful spot to move things. But coming sort of the middle of November is when they're going to have a recommended package. And so obviously making sure that the VRE asks are a part of that is really important. And I just want to do a positive shout out because the VRE staff have been very involved at the technical working groups as well as the briefings to date, because there's been a lot of really good informative. So they've been brought up to speed. They just need to kind of get those final numbers as we walk into 26 so they know what to solve for. And they're looking at 15 different types of revenue. And that was the last meeting we had in June, was providing them really somewhat of an academic or economic understanding of, if you put a penny here, what does it yield? If you put, and it is very much just to understand of the 15 revenue sources, which ones have probably the biggest buying power versus other ones that can be tweaked. And so there's actually, if you really want to dive in, it's a very extensive bit of work from SJ28 on the different revenue things, but it's going to be handed to the legislature to then figure the magic on that. And of course, because I can go on this for hours. Of note, the conversation is not just about raising stuff locally. It's looking at a combination of what can be done statewide and what can be done locally. And that is a part of the conversation. And there may be different ways to be approaching that. So, yeah, so watch the space. But any public recommendations will be after the November election. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I'm just trying to make sure that we are converging.
Absolutely. No, we're working very closely on the timing.
We are a smaller fish here, but there's a fish that's really needs care. And, okay. Good.
So the rest of the agenda is sort of things we do every year. Want to protect Sea Rock as opposed to the croc. So, you know, we make sure that as they are doing these different things, nobody goes, oh, well, can we take some of that money that's going to that Sea Rock fund? We want to make sure that doesn't happen. And then there are always, you know, there are FOIA things that happen. Something I don't have here, but I started to talk with our procurement folks. There may be a couple of procurement related things that they would like to see us pursue. These are just, you know, changes to the way we do negotiations for, you know, some of the contracts, that sort of stuff. So we may, you know, look at that and I'll add that if that's something we want to move forward with in September.
Well, in the current meetings, we want more than what was approved last time, last 26, 25. I mean, that last.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure that we want more. I think this is more about,
Watch the space.
yeah, watch this space. And as there are opportunities to, you know, continue to work flexible, you know, we know the more we can get you guys on there, even when you have your busy schedules and sometimes it takes you out of town or, you know, you can't be at the meeting that's in Roanoke and the meeting that's here. You know, we want you guys to be able to participate as much as possible. So.
Okay.
And so that's it for what I've put in the draft agenda. And so the next thing is, does anybody else have anything that you would like me to start doing some research on and maybe add to this?
So basically the instruction to your legislative assistants, liaisons, et cetera, to know where to go if they have something.
There is a group of all of those folks, and we have a monthly, and when it's in the legislative session, a weekly meeting. So we're all working hand in hand. I got to tell you, if you haven't worked closely with your legislative people, they are amazing. I have to worry about transportation funding and sometimes some FOIA. The breadth of things they have to pay attention to is mind-boggling, and they're all great to work with.
True. How many bills? 3,000.
Yeah,
From wastewater to, you know, taxis and all sorts of stuff. Yes, ma'am.
Joe, with the DMAS fees, you know, thanks for the good news.
I know.
If we, I mean, as soon as you get updates, if you could just kind of keep us abreast.
Okay, sure.
That's gonna have a large impact
Yeah.
on all of us, but just.
And if you go in forward to the presentation, I'm happy to, if you're interested in that.
Actually, we have one who's interested in that. We want to see the blood. It's very well.
I'll find it. So we can have it.
Yeah, I mean, just if you can send it to all of us.
Okay. Joe, sure.
Okay, any other comments, questions? We will see you again and we will see each other again in September, right?
September.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys being here. This is one of the better attended legislative committees we've ever had.
Without objection, thank you to VRE staff for coming.
Yeah.
Enjoy.
Yes.
Oh,
Hey, well, thankfully I don't have to go
well, with somebody like.
right up the road.
Like what?
Oh,
Lucky.
Yes, I.
Lucky person.
Yeah. Yes.
Would love to be meeting where I could go with it.
I know. So that's how, and.
But yeah, if you can talk on the train, that would.
Hit the ground running.